Good evening, and a fine evening it is, right? If you have a preference for the sun, right? But it is lovely. It was 29 degrees in the car earlier. Tough going, right? Tough going. I am. I tend to be a creature of the night myself, but look, I appreciate the sun when it's there. I respect the seasons and swim accordingly, right? But I just wanted to throw something out to people, and that is the idea of acceptance of responsibility. Okay, so I put up a tweet or a poll on Twitter, and I just said, do you believe that you had any part to play in the way Ireland is today? And as it stands, there's about, I think, 65% of people that don't believe that they had any part to play in how Ireland is today. That's not surprising to me, right? Because the way I look at the Irish people, because when I look at Ireland, I look at the Irish people as a whole, as an individual, right? The same way I'd look at a person. And I judge them in the same way. I evaluate them in the same way. Each individual person has different tendencies, right, that come to the fore in different circumstances. The same with Irish people, right? You have groups of people that are totally conformist and some people who won't conform at all, never, right? And then you've kind of people that they'll stand up for certain things but not fundamental things, right? Think personal preferences and stuff they'll stand up for. So you have different types, right? The same way as an individual, we have different tendencies. Nations and populations have different types of people in them, but collectively and holistically, they all come together, melt together to make the Irish people and the Irish psyche as well, right? The Irish temperament, imagination. And so, with that being said, the way I'm looking at the Irish people now is through the lens of a domestic abuse relationship, right? A bad relationship. And if people have experience with this, either by going through it and growing from it, or from standing outside of it and watching it unfold, what I'll say next will make sense to you. And that is, we have the 5 stages of dying, right? Of coming to terms with death. And we've similar stages, although they might not follow each other sequentially. They're there, and some people can spend their life avoiding them, and others, they take them as they come, right? And they demand that they meet the next challenge. They hit the next stage, or they get to the next step of development or understanding, or whatever way you want to look at it, right? So when you see a terrible relationship breakdown, for whatever way the relationship played out, right? And then you have someone who feels hard done by and badly treated in it, and they might be right. They might be totally correct. There is, while you're in the relationship or staying in it, you internalize the blame, right? You introject the blame, and you believe what is being done to you, right? And because something bad is done to you, and it's probably been said to you that you're the cause of it, you start to embody that and believe that about yourself, right? And then for whatever reason, sometimes people never get to this, and a lot of people do. When people start to recognize that maybe I don't really want this anymore, or something has changed enough, or it has intensified enough to scare someone enough, right? To allow them to step back and take a look at it. It might maybe just a snapshot and think, Jesus, this is not a good situation I'm in. They might leave, right? And then the blame stops being solely about them being the cause of things, and it starts to be rinsed out of the person. And where does it go then? It tends to go solely on the other person, right? So from one extreme to the other, from it's all my fault and I'm a terrible person, of course this was done to me because I'm such a horrible person, to I can't believe they did this to me, they are such a disgusting person and I was the victim all along, right? And many people stay stuck in that rut where they can spend their life hating the other person, and maybe in totality the opposite gender totally, right? And write it off, right? All men are the same. Don't get involved in women. They'll just marry you, divorce you, and rinse you for everything you have. You see this. But there's another path as well, right? Or another stage. And that is the acceptance of your responsibility in that terrible situation, right? So even though terrible things were done to you and you, for all intents and purposes, you were a victim in this, there's always something that you're responsible for in that, right? And I would suggest that it is when people begin to believe and accept the fact that they had a part to play in the terrible situation that they're in, then they truly begin to heal. Lessons are learned then. Because you don't necessarily learn much about yourself by constantly pointing the finger at somebody and laying the blame solely at their feet, right? We learn when we recognize the mistakes we have made, how we have bought the lie that somebody sold us, and how we have allowed ourselves to be coerced and manipulated. And some of the circumstances in our own emotional state or psychological state that allowed us to be predisposed to that sort of manipulation. It is when we finally accept those things about ourselves that we can recognize the steps that we took along the way and the steps that we didn't take along the way that landed us in that situation. And then you can grow. Then you kind of have a laugh at yourself at how fragile and weak and needy you might have been, right? Then you grow, then you can learn from the mistakes, and then you can recognize the traps that are there and the pitfalls that are there, that you are probably likely to fall into again, but it's only by recognizing the part you can play in avoiding it and landing yourself in it that you can avoid these things in the future, right? That's when change becomes your weapon, your choice, okay? Because if you don't accept responsibility for the position that you're in, how can you ever expect to change it? If you constantly blame other people for the position you're in, then you're constantly at the mercy of other people, okay? And if you extrapolate that then up to the way a lot of Irish people are viewing the situation we're in with the government and that, 65% of Irish people believing that they had no part to play in the way we are today. The sweat is rolling off me here. That is a dead cert that we're going to stay frozen in the situation that we're in, because if you, as I said, if you don't believe you've any part to play in the situation that you're in, you are almost fated to wait for somebody else to come along to take you out of that position. Because if it was somebody else's responsibility and fault for you being here, it must also be someone else's responsibility and duty to take you out of it as well, okay? So I don't believe anything will change too much so long as we have a good chunk of the population, or just any of the population. The more people that feel that way, the bigger the impact on everybody, right? But even if you've 10% of the population that are that way inclined, it's still an issue, okay? Because there's a lack of accountability within themselves, and therefore they will always look for something outside of themselves to make their lives a little bit easier, a little bit better, a little bit more tolerable, right? And that is the currency of governments. They trade responsibility for influence and power over you. We sell them our responsibility for our lives, and then they sell us back the illusion of security and free things, right? A free ride through life with minimal effort. That's what they sell to us. So, have a good day. What are your thoughts on it? What did you do or not do in your life leading up to the last, however long you're alive, that may have played a part in the position that we're in today? Difficult one.